it's time to get that lower body warmed up for the workout today. So we're going to spend about 5 minutes on some kind of cardio equipment. Get your internal temperature up, all right? Should feel like you're almost ready to start sweating for the warm-up. Just going to elevate everything, get those tendons, those muscles feeling a lot better and more limber on you, okay? So what we're going to do is just some stationary warm-ups for the lower body. After the cardio, we're going to take some of our dynamic swings, all right? We're going to take our knee swings straight up. You can go slightly across the body. Go about 15 to 20 on each side. Keep your hips level, all right? You need to hold on to something to help level out. Keep your hips from swaying left or right or anterior or that posterior shift. Abs tight and tall, all right? 15 on each side. When you're going down, you can almost for yourself squeeze the glute. Abs are tight. You're trying to let that glute now release when you're coming up. So you're getting those glutes to stretch out. So you're coming up. More tight. If we start letting our hips shift, the glute doesn't stretch, and you can make the low back give a little bit of a pull. We don't want that. Low back flat, core tight. That's all you're trying to do is come up, slightly over, get that range of motion out of the tight glutes in there. After we get about 15 there, then we're going to go to the hamstrings. Keep the hips nice and level, letting the leg go up, trying to keep the knees straight, feel that hamstring draw out. Same thing, don't let your body always kick off to the side or straight out in front. Let it come across the body a little bit and just feel that draw out of the hamstrings. Each degree of change causes slightly different draw out of that muscle. Core tight. If you really point the toes up towards the forehead, you can let those calves draw out of there a little bit. So if your toes a little more pointed, you may not feel as much down behind that knee. Keep those hamstrings opened up. Same thing, about 15 to 20, nice and easy. When I'm going back, I'm thinking lengthen, tighten abs. And I'm trying to almost squeeze the glute when I go back behind me. And then letting the hamstring release the energy underneath. Never try to force it into an uncomfortable kick. It's still a controlled swing. So you just let that hamstring just gently stretch out. You gotta give them time to warm up. Don't ever force them, or else you can pull something. And after you get those hamstrings opened up, now we're gonna get that hip motion pattern to open up in that outer position of the hip, up, core tight, engage hip flexors, open those adductors up, let those inner thighs try to release out. So take our hip circles, if we can get about that 10 to 15 each direction. Keep the core tight and tall. Some people get their hips popping. I've got mine a little bit on one side where you really focus on tight and tall. You need to bring the circle down a little bit at first. Really think about how the hips are not wanting to shift on you. The more those hips shift, the more you can get a little bit of that popping and interference. When you come back to the back, we'll try to squeeze and engage the glute. Now I can go circles out, and I'm going to go circles start from the outside in. I'm going to come out here and I'm going to think, engage the glute, pull back midline, drop down, squeeze the glute, get that full range. Try to keep that short range going, let your knee really open up. When you finish, you're standing tall and you're redrawing, reopening. Like push down and extend. Get that full range, squeezing the glute, opening up, coming around. When you're doing these, make sure you always have room to the outside. Don't stand next to a wall or something where you have to change up your motion pattern. Still warming up in there, nice and easy. If you start burning too bad, just don't do as many. Come back to it, do a few more later. As you get more conditioned into doing this, they won't feel as bad, get as heavy. Let them shake out for a second, and we'll get our last one. We'll do our lateral leg swings in there. When you come across the body, we're going to take that hip rotation out of there. Almost point the toes across the body. Let that lateral aspect of those glutes, even that TFL IT band, kind of draw across the body and try to turn it open, squeezing the glutes, trying to rock the hips up. When you come out, across the body, open. Feel all that movement in the hips. You're trying not to use the back to compensate. Same thing here now, we'll take about 15 to 20. Shake them out in between. And the best thing we can do before a workout is a proper warm-up. It's going to help us achieve better range of motion, get more out of our workout, hopefully try to prevent those injuries. Or some thing we can do is push a cold muscle and tight muscle. Now that we got a little more range of motion opened up, got the blood flow going, body temperature up off the cardio. Now let's get the activation out of the glutes and the stabilizers of the hips for everything we have to do. So you have a hip band. Let's go a little hip band on. We'll just stay stationary. You can walk them if you want. Or we're going to go stationary, or we're going to go core tight, hips level, side step out, set your hips. Let your hips drop down and back, press the knees out. Then return. Drop. Drop, press open. Everything is coming from the hips. Press open. That's going to help the knees. The ankles even open up a little bit so the ankles don't stay caved in on us. Then slight push out from the ankles, knees, but it's all being guided from the hips. Core is tall, tight. Every time, come back up, set. Then we'll go about 15 in each direction. Now slide step out that opposite leg. Try when you fall into it, you're even on both sides. You're not leaning one way versus the other. Set. 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 That lateral motion, and then we do a little front plane work where we go wide step, open ups. We'll take a little slide step forward. Imagine you're on the railroad tracks, and you don't want to fall down in between the railroad tracks. You want to stay on top of them. The knees staying wide, and the feet staying wide, and the hips level. Not letting our hips rock. Our hips are kind of like an airplane, trying to fly as smooth and as straight as we can. Slide, set, stabilize the hips. Stabilize the hips. We can get about 10 to 15 steps on each leg, forward and backwards. And you should feel those just really warm up all the stabilizers in those hips. Then after we get the stabilizers warmed up, let's get motion specific a little bit more. Now if we get our body weight squats going, see if the knees feel even a little bit better. We go into our squats. Now's that moment to monitor your feet, your knees, your hips. Are my feet staying nice and flat to the ground? Are my hips guiding me nicely? My knees stay in a nice path so they're not buckling in on me. And you just go as low as it feels comfortable. If the knees feel tight, you stay in a higher range of motion. If you need to hold on to a bar or TRX straps to ease into it, use something to help out with your range of motion at first. Don't be too aggressive in it. And after we get about 15 to 20 there, we feel the hips and knees warm up even more. Now we'll go into our lunge complex to where slide back, get a nice stretch lunge, little push forward, tighten your abs. See if there's any tension in those hip flexors. And then set. Back, little push, I get a little more tightness on my left side, I feel that. Sit back into it, when we come up, we actually activate quad and glute more. So slide back, little push. If we need anything, anywhere from about 5 to 10 each on these, we'll take about 5 to 10 each. Back, back, tighten abs, almost like you're keeping your belly button pulled up tall so you're not here. Really try to lengthen out that whole front side, the abs, the hip flexors, those high quads in there. A lot of tightness likes to hide in there. And after those start feeling better, go normal lunge, arm across, stay tight, turn with the pelvis coming in. Don't just crank on your back. You give a little turn in, and tuck that hip in. Set, I'm pulling my hip around in my body. I'm not just taking my back and turning my back. I'm tall, tight, and draw it. Set, tall, tight. How much can I turn my hips in my body? Never should feel it in the back. Just manipulating the hips there. Same thing, about 5 to 10 each. Then after those start feeling pretty good, let's get the hamstrings, make sure they're not sitting tight. Go to our straight leg deadlift motion. Tall, tight abs. Never curl it into it. Slide the hips back. Lift your tailbone up to the sky. Feel the hamstrings and glutes. Stay nice and tall, and you lift from the hips and lift from that tailbone. You should feel that tailbone lifted. You should feel everything in the hamstrings, and then squeeze the glutes on the way up. So get the hamstrings to stretch, activate glutes. Hamstring stretch, activate glutes. Just check. Same thing, about 15 range, as many as it takes to help feel those hamstrings release in there. All right, then we can get after that lower body workout. All right, keep it feeling good and strong.